Hello, my name is Matt Samudio, and this video is going to be about some topics around Slackware Linux and the TWM window manager. So the reason I got interested in making this video is I was watching some YouTube videos around different Linux distributions, and in particular some videos about the Slackware Linux distribution, and I noticed a pattern, and this here is the last one I looked at, and this guy does a pretty decent job. The video is informative, and he does a pretty good job of talking about some of the basics of Slackware, but he does kind of follow this pattern that I noticed, and that pattern seems to be along the lines of people doing these videos get pretty excited about showing how much comes with a distribution, how much of a desktop experience the user has out of the box with the distribution. A lot of times they go into a lot of kind of oohing and ahhing about how many software packages are there, how many software packages you can go out and find and get, and even getting into a lot of the eye candy and you know, the how huge the desktop environment is and how much it does for you and all that kind of stuff. I kind of think of it as a bigger, better, faster, more eye candy, bone crushing, axle grinding, nitro burning power type of approach to talking about the Linux distributions. And what I got interested in doing is what I want to show a little bit about how much can be done with very little. So hopefully that that's clear about the difference that I see here and what I'm shooting for. So let me give a little background about myself. I've been a Unix user for many years, back into the 80s, and I started using Slackware Linux. Well, I guess let me say first that my my own sensibilities and mindset is very much more Unix centric than it is Linux centric. Like I said, I used Unix for many years, a few different varieties of Unix. I started using Linux in late 1993, and that was actually with the first version of Linux, Slackware, and I've been using Slackware ever since. I have tried many other distributions, and I periodically try them, and try to provide myself with a fair evaluation of the various distributions. But I have preferred Slackware consistently, so that's kind of where my background comes from. I'd like to talk a little bit about Slackware in general. Here's the Slackware home, or the Slackware site. Pretty Spartan. I think that's a fair indication of the Slackware sensibilities, or the Slackware mindset is kind of no nonsense, and hopefully I'll get into more of that a little bit. I'm going to just go into, so this location here is kind of like a snapshot of what's on the distribution installation media, and it's for Slackware 64 and version 14.1 in this particular location here, and they have a source directory here, and I want to go down in here. The reason I want to go down in here is to show something that kind of reflects a little bit about why I like Slackware's particular mindset. Let's pick one of these here. So you see a lot of subdirectories here. What these are is these are actually the individual pieces of software that are included in the distribution. And I'm just going to pick one to kind of use it as an example here. Let's pick. Let's just go ahead and pick grep. So this is what's known as, I guess, a Slack build. Slack build in general is kind of a it's really a build pattern, and this would be the bundle of materials that is required for the Slack build build pattern as applied to this particular piece of software, which is the grep program. This Slack build script here is it really is a wrapper for the build mechanics that the upstream software is intended to be built with. So this is the actual source from the upstream software author, and what we typically find with a common build pattern for software authors is they would use either a make file and the make program to build. A lot of times they'll have a configure script, which kind of does a pre-build phase of determining some parameters and some attributes that the make file has to take into consideration, and then so the common convention would be to type or to invoke the configure command with possibly some options to change some attributes of the build, and then once that's done, you would invoke make, which would use the make file included with the source, and that would actually compile the software into programs and libraries, and then you would invoke make install, and that would utilize a portion of the make file that actually goes about putting the executables and libraries and configuration and stuff into the operating environment's install footprint where they're supposed to be. So the Slack build wrapper script does not change the build mechanics of the particular piece of software any more than absolutely necessary. So like one of the kind of things that the Slack build would do would be to account for so with this familiar configure make install pattern that's common to a lot of upstream software authors. One of the assumptions that's commonly made is that the target location for the software is under a directory path of /usr/local. And Slackware prefers to use a more traditional location of /usr. And then there's like a bin subdirectory and a lib subdirectory, etc., that various files go into. So that's one of the things that the Slack build script would account for, is that configure script can take a common argument or parameter called -- prefix equals, and the default would be /usr/local. Well, Slack build would specify that parameter -- prefix equals /usr. So and that's perfectly within the expectations of the upstream author's build mechanics expectations, but the Slack build would account for making sure that gets set to the way that it would fit better into the Slackware distribution. Now, there's many other things like this that the Slack build script wrapper takes care of, but the bottom line or the intention is that that's all minimized. In other words, the Slack build wrapper does as little as absolutely possible to the upstream author's intentions. Another example of something that might happen is frequently the upstream source has some kind of quirk or maybe even a deficiency where it won't actually build correctly in a Slackware environment. And so then sometimes that upstream source actually needs a small change. And so a patch would be created with that small change. The Slack build wrapper would take care of applying that patch to the upstream source. And again, that the intention would be that that patch is absolutely minimized. It's just a little tweak at changing as little as possible about the upstream materials, just in order to get it to build correctly. So the end result, that the Slack build wrapper exerts a minimal amount of intervention, with the result being a completed build, a completed software build and functioning software. So why this is important to point out, I think, is I think it really shows that the Slackware creators and maintainers really get the notions of reproducibility and modularity. So each one of these pieces of software, this is how they build the distribution, and it's clean, simple, and scalable and extensible. So I can install the distribution binaries as built by the team, and then I can piece by piece, like let's say I wanted to change a little piece of bash. Let's say there's something about the way they compiled bash that I don't like. Maybe I want to provide an extra option to configure, or maybe I want to just make some tiny dumb little change, or maybe I want to make a big change. Either way, I can actually go in and get this Slack build bundle, and I can edit the Slack build script and make whatever little change I want to make, maybe adding my little extra option. Another thing that someone might be interested in doing is, let's say there's now a bash 4.2.1, and I would actually like that new version. Well, I can actually go out and get 4.2.1 and combine it with the Slack build bundle. I can go in and change the Slack build and simply change the version number that's in the Slack build, and I can see that this very little may have changed between 4.2 and 4.2.1. The Slack build may still work perfectly with 4.2.1, and I would then have my software, my new version of bash, built exactly the way the prior version was built, maybe with some change that I might want in there as well. And I retain the confidence about that basically I'm building a piece of software exactly the way the distribution creators and maintainers would have built it. And it's all those details around how this software now fits into the distribution, it's all taken into account. It's all with minimal intervention, and again, no messing with the upstream intentions. This build pattern is extended into the community. So there's this slackbuilds.org site. This is where the community maintains a repository of Slack builds, just like the ones that the distribution creators and maintainers have for all the software that's included in the distribution. The slackbuilds.org site is a repository of Slack builds for software that is not included in the distributions, and it's community maintained. So you're not the distribution creators and maintainers are not saddled with the huge burden of managing all this. It's community maintained. But what I think is important to note here is that the Slackware creators and maintainers have adopted a build pattern that is both lean and clean by virtue of the fact that it's very minimal, but it's also extensible and scalable out into the communities. It's really easy for the community to use this pattern, and when this pattern is used to build other software, this other software fits then very nicely with little to no intervention into the distribution as well. So, you know, this is FFmpeg. This is a Slack build for FFmpeg. You would grab this. This is the Slack build bundle that has the materials for doing the Slack build, and this is the source from the upstream author, directly from the upstream author. And there may be newer versions of this source, but this is the particular version that this Slack build was tested with and is known to work with the current version of Slackware. Now, the idea is you know, this is maintained by Heinz Weisinger, so the understanding is that Heinz keeps an eye on this and keeps it up to date. So when new versions of FFmpeg come out, it's of primary interest to him to make sure to go ahead and test the Slack build with that, maybe make some adjustments or tweaks to make sure it works and make sure this page reflects the latest version that will work with Slackware. And since I'm picking on Heinz, I'm just going to assume that he has done a wonderful job of maintaining the Slack build. Of course, mileage varies. Some people are maybe not quite as ambitious as others, but in general, this community-supported effort works extremely well. And you know, it's also a really well-placed compromise between, you know, it's easy enough that pretty much anybody can do this. You download this, you download that, you run the Slack build script that comes with this, and it does the build for you. It creates, and the target or the end result is a binary package that you simply install as a package. So, I mean, it's easy enough that pretty much anybody can do this, yet it's simple and streamlined enough. There isn't a lot of complexity built into it. It doesn't involve some of the problems that come with more sophisticated and more ambitious package management systems. So it's a really nice, I consider it an optimal compromise between those two. So I think that reflects pretty well how I believe that Slackware itself fits into this picture of providing quite a bit with, I mean, so much can be done with very little. I want to take just a brief time to talk about some Unix and Linux philosophy or mindset in general. So, and again, this kind of goes into explaining why I think these topics that I'm talking about are interesting and important. So let's get back to what a lot of the people that make these videos are kind of doing is they're kind of approaching presenting Unix or Linux, you know, the latest version of whatever distribution of Linux, in kind of a shock and awe. Look how much you have when you get this. Look how much comes with it. Look how great the animations and eye candy on the desktop is. Look how pretty the new version of KDE is that comes with this. Or, you know, what I kind of boil all that down to is we're kind of starting off with, there's this expectation that centers around the desktop-oriented user experience. And I think it's fair to say that perspective or that focus really comes from people's familiarity with the Windows environment. So if you're going to talk about a Unix or Linux system and you want to compare it to anything, to really give Unix and or Linux any kind of fair consideration, you really have to keep in mind and also adequately deal with the significant, the just drastic difference between where the strengths are between the two different kinds of user experiences. And to do that, you almost have to back way out and talk about things that are precursors to even getting to the operating system itself. So let's talk about I just want to talk briefly about the Unix mindset, or the UNIX-like sensibilities. They really start from a perspective of people use computers because they need the computer as a tool to get work done, and computers are really good at certain things, so we want to use the computer as a tool. And probably one of the most fundamental pieces of Unix sensibility that you'll hear from pretty much anybody that gets the Unix mindset, is that Unix kind of ascribes to the notion that tools are best made when they're narrowed in scope to something fairly specific, and that the tool should do only so much, and it should do it very, very well. And then in addition to that, with the notion of narrowly scoped tools that work extremely well at the little bit that they do, those tools should be able to be combined and mixed and basically orchestrated to do more complex things. So the tools are designed to be narrowly focused and very good at what they do, in addition to being able to be combined easily. So that's really fundamental to the Unix mindset. So what derives directly off of that is that the user, there's kind of an expectation of the user that and it's not a burden. It's not meant to be a burden to the user. It's meant to be for the user's own good. That they're expected to have some kind of comprehension around those tools that are offered to them. They have to have some comprehension and understanding around those tools, and it's in their best interest to develop some skill and fluency with those tools. And then from there, it's kind of like a launching platform where the user is expected to then use their own creativity, their own skills, their own motivations to then combine and create using the tools that are offered to them, combine and create to solve the problems that they want to and do the work that they want to do. So that's really where the Unix mindset comes from. The user is not nearly as much of a passive participant. They're not a passenger in the computing experience. They're expected to be the driver, and the Unix, let's call it the community or the tradition, is to provide a platform of tools that the user is going to use in driving their own solutions. So in contrast, and I don't want to pick on Windows too much, but Windows is probably the most immediately clear example of the opposing, or the alternative, in which the user is more passive in the computing experience. So it's kind of like if you were to phrase it, it would be something more like computers are really powerful tools, especially when really smart people can bundle together complex functionalities and provide them so that they're easily invoked or utilized by end users that don't have to know anything about how the complex work is being accomplished. So hopefully hopefully I've explained that difference fairly and clearly. So I believe that explains really clearly why, you know, when we're looking at the Windows experience, it's very, very focused on the desktop and the visual stimulation that the user gets from the desktop, and how well things are packaged up, in a sense that the user doesn't have to do much more than just click a few things, and very complex jobs are accomplished for them. Very complex tasks are accomplished for them without them having to know anything about it. That's the Windows user experience, and it's not at all fair to compare, to start out with that as the expectation, and then look at a Unix system and say, well, it doesn't match that expectation very well, so it sucks. I mean, that just, you know, that just doesn't, it's not fair at all. Because in the Unix environment, or in the Unix mindset, as I explained earlier, the existence of graphics at all are so much of an afterthought. We don't need graphics to get work done. Now, I'm not saying that there's no value to having graphics, and that, you know, that we shouldn't have graphics, but I'm saying that if you consider about what actually needs to be done to get work done, especially if you look at it from the Unix sensibility perspective, there's so much that can be done without graphics. The graphics are so much of an afterthought. They are the tip of an iceberg, and as I said, an afterthought from the Unix perspective. So trying to compare a Windows experience with a Unix experience is not at all fair, especially if you start with your expectations derived from the Windows experience. So why I think this is important to talk about, especially for this video, is, again, when I get back to what these other people making these videos are doing, is, to me, it's almost like they're kind of starting out saying, look how much the new version of Linux is like Windows. You know, look how close we're getting to being able to do everything the way Windows does it. And to me, that's, I'm not trying to rip on anybody here. I'm not even trying to criticize. I'm just saying that's one particular way to look at it. It's not the only way. I think there's value in looking at it other ways too. I mean, there's nothing wrong with someone preferring that. I mean, if they really love that, I mean, it doesn't make sense for everybody to be a programmer. It doesn't make sense for everybody to want to, you know, to get into the guts of their computer. It makes perfect sense that there would be a stratosphere of different kinds of users, and some users in one strata, that Windows experience may be absolutely perfect for them. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And there's also nothing wrong with that same strata of users maybe also being able to have a choice of using Linux or Unix, which would mean that there would have to be something similar built on top of the Unix, Linux platforms that would provide that for them. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trying to criticize that. What I am trying to say is simply that that can't be the only angle that we look at these things from. So hopefully that's clear of why I wanted to talk about that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into TWM here. So, and again, just as a reminder, I'm trying to get across a little bit around how much can be done with very little. So I've got Slackware Linux here. This computer is running Slackware Linux, and it's Slackware 64, version 14.1. And I have TWM running as my window manager here. And the first thing that you'd want to talk about when you're looking at how do you use, I almost forgot. Let's talk just a little bit about TWM itself. Nice Wikipedia entry on TWM. TWM is a very early window manager. I believe somewhere it's in here in the page here. So yeah, TWM eventually replaced UWM as the kind of the reference or stock window manager for X, and it looks like it happened maybe somewhere in '88 or somewhere around there. I never saw UWM myself, but this happened, quite a long time ago. And TWM is still the reference window manager in X. It's still there. It hasn't changed at all for a long time. It's rock solid. I've looked at the code. It's very clean, very tight, very small code. The window manager itself does very little. But again, pursuant to my focus here, what it does do, the very little that TWM does do, provides an amazing amount of capability, functionality. Again, doing so much with very little. So that's kind of the background around TWM. Let's get into how it works. First thing you'll notice when you look at a TWM desktop is okay. So there's this thing across the bottom that I think people call it a title bar or a status bar. Where is it? It's not here. And where's the start menu? There's no start menu. So TWM does not provide those things. There's nothing taking up screen real estate, and nothing stationarily positioned, in the desktop space for that. What TWM does provide is what I consider a very intuitive and very powerful and flexible alternative. So how do we start programs? If we left click on any spot on the desktop, so I'm going to left click, and again that's the index finger click, just plain left click, we get a main menu. And this thing is completely configurable. I'm going to show how easy this is configured later. I've packed it with these particular things. I don't need to go into the details too much. Let's just say, these things right here are things that I execute all the time. So they are immediately available to me on a click. I have some tools, basic tools. I have a whole submenu of tools here. Some audio specific programs, some other, applications. Again, some other things that I do fairly frequently, so I want them right at my fingertips. But this menu is easily accessed, and you can tailor it to however you want it. Okay, so the other thing that's typically in this bar across the bottom, which we don't have here, is you have this area. I don't know if you call them icons or buttons or what, but all the windows that you have open have a button in this bar that you click. You can find your windows and select them there. That is provided by TWM in, again, what I would call an extremely intuitive and powerful and flexible mechanism. I right click on any spot on the desktop and I get a window menu. So I can see all my windows I've opened and select them from here. So again, I left click, have a main menu, right click, window list. And another thing that I consider very flexible and powerful about this is it's not stationarily positioned somewhere that's inconvenient to get to. It's wherever I happen to be. Just find a piece of desktop, and if I'm over here doing some stuff, whatever, and I want to see my window list, it's right there. It follows me around. I don't have to go to some place inconvenient to invoke these things. So score 1 for TWM in my book there. I think that's a really great thing. The next fundamental that you'd probably need to know about is the title bar. And this is what gets added to every window. There is a way to actually configure specific windows to not get a title bar if you prefer. But by default, Windows all get a title bar, and there's some basic functionality here. Another thing to note here is with TWM, you can there isn't a lot of crap around the windows here. Notice that there's a 1 pixel border, and I've configured it to light up yellow to help in showing which window is active. But other than that 1 pixel border around the window, there's nothing cluttering up my windows. And the title bar that's on each window is very minimal as well. So from a screen real estate and from just a simple intuitive usage perspective, I mean, how much better could you get, as far as simple to use? Let's talk about the title bar a bit. If I click on the title bar, it brings the window to the front. That is usually known as raising the window, and so that functionality is pretty typical to any desktop environment. If I click on the title bar, it raises the window. What's cool about TWM, or one of the cool things about TWM, is if I click in the window itself, that doesn't have to mean that the window gets raised. So I can click in these windows and do stuff in them without raising them. And that is a very powerful feature. So let's say I'm editing this file and I want to put some text here from the browser window. And that's where I want to. Note, if I have to move the browser window in front in order to do something in the browser window, now the spot where I have my cursor is covered up. I've lost it. So I go and get my text and I copy it. Now I have to go back and I have to re-raise the other window, and now I have to paste. Okay, well, with TWM I don't have to do that. I can actually go over here and copy and paste without moving anything. So that, and I realize my examples here are very simple, but hopefully it's clear that ability to be able to do that comes in real handy and can save you a lot of window shuffling and stuff as you're doing your work. So again, I score TWM a +1 on this because that's something that is impossible to do in Windows, and even some Unix or Linux desktops don't really give you that capability, or maybe they can't. Some of them definitely do, but TWM does that. So so in the title bar, this is the iconify button, and this is the resize gadget. We'll talk a little bit about those. So let me first talk about the resize. So I'm not actually going to show resizing in this video because I ran into that. There's a tiny little deficiency around, and it's very specific to if you're recording the desktop using the Windows grabbing recording functionality. So when you resize, TWM animates the window, and for some reason, the way that the window is animated, it locks down the rest of the X events. So while you're resizing a window, nothing else moves or nothing else happens. The TWM grabs a hold of the X activity and suspends it while it's resizing. And so what that does is it disrupts the video recording because the video recording is grabbing off of the X activity. So that particular resizing activity disrupts the recording and it causes little skips in the video. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to describe the resizing. So if I grab and hold the resize gadget, I can actually move around inside the window and nothing will resize until I break the plane of the edges. So what I can do is I can grab, click and hold and drag resizing until and go to where I want to resize. So let's say I want to resize by pushing out this side. So I'm resizing in only the horizontal direction. So I click, hold, and drag, and I push out here. And as soon as I break the plane of the edge of the window, it'll actually start resizing the window in this direction only. So I can widen the window, and once I've started the resizing, I can actually pull it back too. So I can increase or decrease the width of the window on this edge only by doing that. I can similarly do that on every edge. So I have controlled resizing of only the horizontal or only the vertical if I want. That's immensely powerful. I can use that in all sorts of ways to have very controlled resizing. I can keep the vertical size while I'm changing the horizontal size. That's really, really powerful. If I want to resize in both dimensions simultaneously, I can do that by grabbing and breaking both planes. I can resize vertically and horizontally simultaneously if I want, but sometimes I don't want to do that. So many other desktop environments only provide you with areas in the corners that you can grab, and as soon as you grab them, you are resizing in both dimensions simultaneously without choice. And sometimes it's very difficult to get the dimensions you want. I want to resize horizontally without changing my vertical size. Sometimes that's very difficult to do when you're simultaneously resizing. So again, I give a +1 to TWM for providing that very powerful functionality and flexibility that a lot of other desktop managers don't give you. So there's that. Another quick mention, I have a configuration set with my TWM that what window is in focus follows my mouse. So you'll notice I don't have to click anywhere to change what window I'm typing in. Some people like that, some people don't. I particularly like that. It's configurable. You can set TWM so that you actually have to click in a window for it to get focus. Setting that focus policy where you have to click in the window, that doesn't change your preference as far as if clicking in a window raises it or not. So, I can have the focus in a window without raising it. And I can have that focus transfer by either clicking in the window or by simply moving the mouse in the window. It's my preference. So, and that's configurable. So let me just show a little bit about this raising and lowering of windows. One thing that's really cool is, like I said, I can focus a window without raising it. I can type and operate in that window without raising it. But I can also move this window without raising it. So I can get an effect like this. See, I'm moving behind and in front of. See, I'm actually between these two windows. And I don't have to change that stacking order to move my windows around. I can't even begin to state how powerful that is. I mean, I can't overemphasize how powerful that is. And it's something completely impossible with Windows, and is actually something that's not readily available in some Linux desktops as well. So again, from from a simplicity standpoint, TWM provides this easy as pie, and it does it without bloat, without, again, TWM is tiny, doing so much with very little. So let's move on to iconification. So there's a feature that some desktops provide. It's known as window shading. I really like that feature, and here's where that feature kind of, at least where I think the appeal of that feature comes from. Typically, in a lot of desktop environments, if you iconify a program, it's going to go, where is the icon for that program? Some desktop environments will snap that icon to a predetermined location. So it would be something similar to this. So icons are snapped into a column over on the left side. So if I iconify a program, the icon immediately goes over there. And you have no choice about that. And even if you do move it, it's going to snap to other predetermined locations, that kind of thing. So TWM doesn't do that. By default, well, let me get back to the window shading. So because of that behavior where iconifying a program results, iconifying a window results in the icon for that window being snapped over to some inconvenient location where it's not convenient for me to go over and restore that icon. Sometimes I might have to go to some title bar or some, status bar to find the icon and then do it, or I might have to go over to some location or whatever. So an answer to that is the window shading function, and that's where some desktop environments let you double click on a title bar, and the window actually kind of rolls up and disappears where only the title bar is left. And what's significant about that is it's an in-place compacture, so that the window compacts but it stays in place, and it's a nice feature. It's I got attached to that using other window managers, but so TWM doesn't provide that functionality explicitly, but it provides something very similar, possibly even better, because out of the box, or by default, when you iconify a window, it in place iconifies to a little strip like this, very similar to if it window shaded. So by default, you kind of get the window shade feature or something very close to it right away. But TWM goes a step further, and so the window position and the icon position are tracked separately. So I can move this icon, and notice it's not snapping to any kind of predetermined location. I can move it to wherever I want. So let's say I want to just move it right into the crook here between these two windows. I can do that. And it did not change the active window position. So they're separately tracked. And likewise, I can move this, and it doesn't disrupt where the icon position was. So they're separately tracked, completely up to the user where they want to. And by default, it just iconifies in place, much like a window shade. So you kind of get all of that cool functionality rolled into one. It's simply the intuitive default that TWM provides. So again, I give that a +1 for TWM, because I just think that's really powerful and flexible. So, but you have alternatives. You have options. So now let's get into these little things over here. These are called icon managers, and they're completely optional. You don't have to have them. You can by default have all of your windows iconify to these little strips if you want. But another pet peeve of mine that I've developed over using many different desktop environments. I hate clutter on the desktop because my primary needs for the desktop is this is where I need to manage the work I'm doing. This is where all my windows are. I don't want a bunch of crap cluttering up the desktop. So and by crap cluttering the desktop, it's like if that's an icon I need to get to and there's windows over it, I have to start shuffling and moving windows around in order to get to it. I don't like that. I want to minimize the collision of my usable desktop space with my icons. So in this case, I created a few different icon managers. And again, I've got a lot of choice here. TWM gives you a simple way to create icon managers and how to specify what goes in them. Very simple capability. And through my own choices, I can simply provide powerful utilization of that. So what I do is I create these 3 different icon managers. And this one is particular to editor windows. So anything that's VI or GVim or anything gets into this icon manager here. I have another one for terminals, and I'm a developer, so I typically have lots of editor windows open. I've only got a couple open now, but I typically have a lot of them, so this box actually gets kind of big. I want to get it out of the way, but I want them at my fingertips, if I need to select them. Same thing with terminals. I typically have a lot of terminals open. I want this at my fingertips to get to my terminals, but I also want to be able to get it out of the way. And then anything that doesn't go into those particular categories, then I have a kind of a general icon box that everything else shows up in. And I can push all that stuff out of the way, but yet very readily accessible at my fingertips in groups, in categories. So again, very simple mechanism that TWM provides with very little work that it's doing to do it, but what it provides is extremely powerful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about configuration here. So this menu, again, as I said, is very configurable. So I set up a tools submenu, and under that tools I have a menu item that I created that simply opens my .twmrc file. That is the config file for TWM. This menu item simply opens that file in an editor. And I'm just going to take a quick moment to set GUI to increase the font size so that it's more easily seen. I know that so my desktop's fairly high resolution, and I work with small fonts because I like being able to fit a ton of windows into my screen real estate. And I have good eyes, so I can read all this stuff. But I know for creating the video, this stuff's hard to read at this size. So I increased my font size to make this readable on the video. So this is the .twmrc, and it's the configuration file for TWM. I just want to give a quick scroll through this to show how tiny this is. The entire configuration for TWM is in this one file, and I have a pretty, detailed configuration of my TWM desktop here, and it's just so tiny. That's all there is to it. I'm just going to run through this quick. I have some options specified up here. These are things like, opaque move. That's a configuration option that allows TWM to show the window as I move it around. Typical option for a lot of desktop environments. TWM has that. No raise on move. That is the option that allows me to do this. Just because I'm moving a window doesn't mean I have to bring it to the front, which I find extremely powerful. That's the configuration option that gives me that. Same thing with the no raise on resize. I can actually resize windows behind each other. Very cool. Here's all my fonts. You know, that's my particular font preferences. Here's the colors. Again, these are just RGB values. There's a whole bunch of easy ways to get the RGB values for your favorite colors. There's even websites out there that have a web page that it's like a big list of the color swatches. You can eyeball them and decide which ones you like, and it's got the RGB values right next to them. So you can just plug those values in. Super, super simple. Here's some button configuration. Here's my icon manager. I mean, look how simple that is. I mean, it's just, and all this configuration is detailed very clearly in a nice man page for TWM. I want to talk briefly about this one here. This is a simple little menu that I created. So it doesn't come with TWM. I made this up. Super simple, super tiny. What it is if I right click on the title bar, I get this menu. So one of my pet peeves is the X button that lots of or desktop environments have. You click on that and it closes the window. I hate that button. I can't tell you how many times I have accidentally hit that while I'm reaching for the resize or something like that. I don't want that button to accidentally hit right on the surface of my windows. So instead, you know, I could easily create that button and add it to this title bar if I want, but instead I added it as an item in this tiny little menu that I get to by right clicking on the title bar. And it's not the first item in the menu either, so it's not going to accidentally get hit all the time like I do with the X button that's always there. So I can close my window easily with a right click close, just as easy as clicking a built-in close button. This kill is similar to the close, but it forcibly destroys the window. So that's something that you might use if the program behind the window has hung or crashed or something and the window doesn't go away. You can forcibly destroy the window. That's going to kill it no matter what. So that's handy to have there. But primarily, this little menu here has this lower. So this comes in handy for something like this. So let's say I've got this window in front of that window, and I don't want this window in front of that window anymore. Typically, I would have to move this in order to get to the title bar, but instead, I can right-click and lower, and it pushes it to the back. And again, combining with, I can click something to the front easily. You know, I can reshuffle the layers of windows extremely easily. So when you combine this with the capabilities of moving windows without raising them, you know, this kind of stuff, when you combine all these capabilities, it is such powerful control over the arrangement and layering of your windows that you just can't match with any other desktop environment that I know of. Especially not Windows. You can't do any of this stuff in Windows. So, and let me reiterate here. We're not talking about some huge, fancy, new, bloated window manager that just came out that gives you all this powerful stuff. We're talking about the leanest, tiniest little window manager that's been around forever and hasn't changed. It's rock solid. It's been here forever, and it gives you all of this power that you can't match with lots of much more involved and complex desktop environments. So I just wanted to, again, keep mentioning that because I just think it's literally extremely profound. And it's really kind of the point of this video. So, okay, so back to the configuration file. Probably the only thing left to show is the menus, and this is all these menus Here's my main menu, which again is this thing here. And for instance, you can see how easy it is to add a submenu. I add this line. It's adding the menu named tools as a submenu. Well, that tools menu is just right up here. And, you know, nested in that one, I have another one that I'm going to create a submenu in there called WinOps. Well, that WinOps menu is simply this one up here. So it's really easy to nest menus and create submenus and arrange things exactly as you want. This syntax for how to do the menu items, I mean, it really couldn't be any simpler. So, okay, so sure, admittedly, you have to be able to read a text file and edit a text file. Okay, so I'm sorry, but I configure, or I consider the ability to view and edit a text file as fundamental in this information age where computers are, you know, becoming part of our everyday life. I consider this ability to view and edit text files as fundamental as being able to walk across the room in the real world. I mean, so this notion that, oh my God, I can't deal with that because I have to edit a text file, I can't even consider that notion seriously. So yes, you have to be able to view and edit a text file to configure TWM, but okay, so be it. You know, I just don't think that's a problem. And when you look at how simple this stuff is, I mean, it's just, I just don't think it could get any simpler. So there's that. That's configuration. I want to just move briefly into some, I guess what I've called advanced topics. I want to give an example, again, speaking towards, and in particular with Slackware and the Unix mindset that Slackware is, I think, exemplary in reflecting the Unix mindset. If I didn't mention it before, that's another thing I would say about Slackware is, you know, its primary aim is to provide a Unix-like operating environment, and to continue providing a Unix-like operating environment in concert with how all the different software that keeps evolving and that you can keep getting, you can have that software, but it's on top of a continually preserved Unix mindset. So that's another way that I would articulate what Slackware is. Okay, so some advanced topics. So let's take just a quick look at, again, what I call an example of doing a lot with very little. So I want to talk about how I'm recording this video. So, you know, one option would be to go out and find a program that has a GUI that you start the program and it has buttons and things that you click, and you decide how you want your desktop recorded, and you start recording with the GUI, and then you're recording your desktop, and then when you're done you hit a stop button. You could go out and find a piece of software that bundles all that together, and it would probably be a GUI, a graphical user interface oriented program. You could do that, but I'd like to show you how I've done it here without doing that. And so I've already shown how easy this menu is to configure. So one item I've added is this desktop video item, and all this item does is it runs a command, and that command is a script that I wrote. So I'm going to bring up that script. First I'm going to launch a terminal, and I've made sure that this terminal is has a nice big font, because I know you want to be able to read it, so I figured I'd do that for you. Okay, so I've got a terminal here, and I'm going to edit my script. So I called it deskvid. So in my menu here, this menu item simply actually just calls deskvid, and that's it. So it was real easy to get the GUI portion of launching my desktop recording added to TWM. It was as easy as just adding this menu item. So I invoke that, I click on that menu item, and it launches this script. Now what the script does is it really just calls a Unix program, or a program on my system called ffmpeg, and it calls it with these options. Now I've set some variables here. These are things I might want to change occasionally, so I set them in variables, and then those variables are added to this command line. So but the end result is that this program gets called with these options. Now I'll admit that it did take me a little bit of research, a little bit of time to figure out what these command line options should be for ffmpeg, but it wasn't really very difficult, because again, going back to the Unix sensibilities, ffmpeg is an already existing program on many systems, or it's easily acquired, and it's narrowly focused. It does a few things, and it does them really, really well. So what ffmpeg does is it's focused around encoding video, decoding video, supporting a lot of codecs for doing those things, and converting video from one format to another. And around the periphery, it does a few extra things, like one thing handy that it does is it will actually capture video from the X graphics of your desktop. So I've got an X11 grab format that ffmpeg is grabbing, and this is actually accomplishing the recording of my desktop as a video. And I can specify some codecs and things, frame rate, all this kind of stuff. I've got the actual resolution of my screen that I'm capturing, the offset, or the actual place in my desktop I'm recording, which I'm recording the whole thing. So I'm starting at 0, 0, way up in the corner, and I'm recording the full resolution of the desktop. I could actually change these values and record only a square on my desktop if I wanted to. So again, very simple ways to do very powerful things with just this tool. Now I've combined it with the fact that I can call this tool from a script, and I can invoke this script from a menu item, so I don't need a GUI to launch the recording of my desktop. I can just do it right with this simple stuff. Now when it comes to closing or ending my my video recording, well, normally, so I launched this ffmpeg as a program from the script. Normally what I would have to do is, in order to end my desktop recording, I would have to find the process for that ffmpeg, and I would possibly do that with so I'm listing the processes that belong to me, and I'm filtering for ffmpeg, and so that shows me this. Notice I also found this process, which is actually running this grep, this filter. So I could revise this command to filter out that line. So now what I'm going to see is a list of just the ffmpeg process. And then here's the process ID. So then to end my desktop recording, I would type kill and that process ID. And if I hit the enter key now, it would end this video. So I'm not going to do that right now, but that's what I would normally have to do. So instead of that, I created another script, which I call dvid kill. And after I launch ffmpeg, I invoke that script, and I pass to it the process ID of the ffmpeg process that I kicked off. That's what this syntax is here. It's the process ID for the last child process kicked off. So I grab that and I pass it to my dvid kill script. So let me show you what. So this dvid kill script is, I want to point out a couple differences. So again, hearkening back to the Unix sensibilities, this syntax up at the top of the script is a traditional convention in the Unix world for the execution of a script can be accomplished by you have your script itself and you set the file permissions on that script to include execute permissions, and then the first line of that script has this hashtag, exclamation point, and then a path to a program. This program is now taken as the interpreter that's actually going to execute the contents of the script. This is a traditional Unix convention. So why I think it's important to mention this? Well, this is one of the things that, from the Unix perspective, this makes user programs or user scripts in particular seamlessly integrated into the user's operating environment. So I can now invoke this script on the command line exactly like I invoke any other program in the Unix environment. And similarly, those scripts don't have to be processed or executed by any particular interpreter. I can launch any kind of interpreter to execute any kind of script in an identical manner. So we do this with Perl scripts. So you put user bin Perl here, and so then when I execute this script, that first line, that's the program that's actually going to be executed to interpret and execute the contents of the script. And I can write my own programs that read a script and process the contents and do stuff with it and make it executable, just like this. So again, you can do so much with just that one little mechanism. So this is a good example. So this particular script is processed by the wish interpreter. That is the interpreter for the TCL or Tickle language, and TK is kind of the companion GUI toolkit for that programming language, scripting language. So I happen to like Tickle TK, and so I implemented this as a Tickle TK script. And really, it's pretty simple. What it does is it creates this window, it puts in this label, it sets the title of the window, puts in this label, and I have passed in that process ID. That process ID was the process ID of the child process that FFmpeg was kicked off in. So I passed that over to the script. So now this little window here is remembering that process ID, and it lays it out nice for me to see it. And when I hit the stop button, it's going to invoke this this procedure in the script. And what that procedure does is, you can see ultimately it runs the Unix kill command with that process ID. So in essence, I've basically tied this little this little stop window to my video recording process. So when I hit the stop button, it's going to kill that process, which ends my desktop video recording. And that's what I'm going to do at the end of this video. So again, to recap what I've actually done here, what we've got is we've got, again, tied back to TWM's easily configurable menu with a simple item that simply invokes my own little script that kicks off a thing recording my desktop, and also gives me another simple little script to stop it when I'm ready. And I've done that whole thing without having to get a big GUI program to manage recording my desktop. So I think this is a clear and good example of, again, how we can do so much with very little. So I wanted to show that. I guess another quick little point to make, even though my window manager doesn't do very much, that's not related to if I do want to run some GUI programs. These GUI programs that can be very graphically intensive, they all still work fine. Their functionality is separate from the desktop environment itself. So I've got Firefox here. You know, I can go out and I can play videos, and they work just as good as they do under any other desktop environment. I just don't have all the other stuff around it. I don't need it. I mean, hopefully I've shown how much you can do with very little here, so that, I mean, the case can be made. You just don't need all that other stuff. You can do so much and more with how simple this is. So there's that. I just want to give a little overview here of. So this is just kind of taking a brief look at resource usage. So I have 6 cores. They're bouncing around a bit. You can easily see here that most of the CPU usage is simply the act of recording the desktop. And the FFmpeg, you know, it's using a few different threads to capture all the audio and the video. And we have X, which is also cooperating with FFmpeg to deliver that video to the recording pipeline. So this is where all the CPU usage is happening right now. I've got Firefox doing a little bit. I've got my webcam video, live video stream up here. That's actually taking up some CPU. So where's TWM in here? Well, it's not even on the top of the list here. Oh, here it is, right here. So yeah, you can see in terms of percentage, we're using such microscopic amounts of CPU and memory that it doesn't even register. And you can look at the actual amounts using just a tiny bit of shared memory, a tiny bit of resident memory, and even I've got a little bit that's swapped out, but it's 36 meg. It's like tiny. This is my whole desktop environment right here. It's just using nothing. So I think it's worth mentioning and worth showing. I think we're reaching the point where hopefully I've done a fairly decent job of showing what I wanted to show. Please feel free to leave comments or ask questions in the comment section. I'd be happy to answer any questions or whatever. I am going to do some more videos along these lines. I'll get into maybe some more focused topics like things that you can do from the command line with basic scripting and Unix, already available Unix tools. Maybe make some videos around that. There's another desktop or window manager that I use. Again, very lean, very Spartan. It's called Notion, and it's a tiling window manager. And I made one video about that, which I don't like how it turned out. I'm going to make another one similar to this one that goes into how much you can do with so little in that tiling window manager scenario. If you'd like to see any other kinds of things explored in the approach that I've taken here, go ahead and mention that in the comments. But I think I'm about done with what I wanted to say today. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I will catch you on the flip side, so to speak. So goodbye, and I'll be ending the video with the click of my little button here. So bye.